structures. Could be some further impacts following the storms at the weekend. Otherwise, a breezy day to come for northern parts of the UK. Some sunny spells, a few showers in the far north of Scotland. Much cloudier further south, where it will be mild at 11 or 12 Celsius. We keep the cloud across southern areas overnight. In fact, there'll be thicker cloud pushing in from the west as the night goes on. Some more persistent rain into Northern Ireland for a time, western parts of northern England, as well as western and southern Scotland. Showers continue across the Northern Isles, and for Shetland, they'll be falling as sleet and snow overnight. But further south, drier with some breaks in the cloud. However, for the vast majority, it is a mild night. That is away from Shetland, where it will be cold. Cold air continues there for Shetland as we start off tomorrow, but otherwise a lot of the cloud across the UK remains. Further outbreaks of light rain and drizzle for Northern Ireland, western Scotland, as well as parts of northwest England. But drier and brighter further south. Some sunshine coming through, and with a lighter breeze, it will feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine. Temperatures above average, 10 to 12 Celsius for the vast majority. Into Wednesday evening, and we'll see the outbreaks of light rain and drizzle become heavier and more persistent across the north and northwest of Scotland, staying damp for northern parts of the UK through the night, but drier further south. A lot of cloud cover, so a mild start once again on Thursday. Again, it's going to be damp in the north and west on Thursday. Brighter skies follow on Friday.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. It's the day after that report finally landed, or rather a very heavily edited version of it. We'll be asking two Conservative MPs what happens now. And the levelling up proposals are out tomorrow. I'm talking with Shadow Secretary for Levelling Up, Lisa Nandy, about what the North needs. But first, it's the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it is 12 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keep you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister is on his way to Ukraine to address the threat posed by Russia. Boris Johnson is going to meet President Volodymyr Zelensky to try to find a diplomatic solution amid heightened tensions with Moscow. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss was supposed to be going, but she's tested positive for coronavirus. Well, the UK is providing tens of millions of pounds of new funding to shore up democracy in the country and to reduce reliance on Russian energy. Former NATO commander Rear Admiral Chris Parry says it's important the Prime Minister shows his support for Ukraine.
Part of Putin's policy is to destabilise and delegitimise the government and the institutions of Ukraine such that it doesn't function as a proper state, one that can shape its own future. Because President Putin's real fear, of course, is Ukraine is a success, and everybody in Russia is going to say, well, if Ukraine can do that, then why can't we have that sort of government in Russia? This is the real neurosis that is driving Putin in this regard.
Meanwhile, there have been renewed calls for Boris Johnson's resignation, despite his pledge to overhaul how he runs government. The Prime Minister apologised yesterday after the Sue Gray report into alleged Downing Street parties found failures of leadership and judgment. Boris Johnson says an updated version of the inquiry will be published after the police investigation is complete. Well, Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen told GB News the buck stops with Boris Johnson.
We've got a concession from the Prime Minister that he will release the Sue Gray report unredacted in full. All we've seen is 12 pages of filleted report, but that was actually damning enough. Serious misjudgments and leadership across Number 10 and the Cabinet Office, widening the blame, never mentioning the Prime Minister, but ultimately he sets the culture in Number 10 and the government.
Meanwhile, Conservative MP David Davis is repeatedly calling for Boris Johnson to step down.
Having seen 3 leaderships fall in the Tory party, this would take forever. They all were a death of 1,000 cuts. It was incredibly corrosive. I mean, John Major, for example, we ended up with the worst result in a century, virtually. Theresa May, the agony of the last 2 years. And I don't want to see our country or my party or actually even Boris go through that.
A US judge has asked for help from British courts to try to obtain evidence from Prince Andrew's former assistant, Robert Olney. Judge Lewis A. Kaplan wants Olney to be questioned about communications Prince Andrew had with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre, as well as his travel to Epstein's homes. Prince Andrew's being sued by Miss Giuffre, accused of sexual assault. He denies all of the allegations against him. Around 1,600 Tesco staff are facing redundancy. The supermarket chain is going to stop replenishing stock overnight at dozens of stores, and some of its petrol stations will no longer be staffed out of hours. Tesco's also closing its Jack's discount shops, saying it wants to focus on its core business. National Highways will not face corporate manslaughter charges over 2 fatal crashes on a smart motorway. Police have announced they won't be taking action after investigating the deaths of 3 people on the M1 last year. It's after a coroner concluded there was an ongoing risk of future deaths on motorways without a clear hard shoulder. The Met Police says it's deeply sorry for the appalling conduct of one of its team after a watchdog found evidence of bullying, racism and misogyny within its ranks. The Independent Office for Police Conduct investigated 14 officers at Charing Cross Police Station. 2 were dismissed for gross misconduct, 2 quit, and several others faced disciplinary action. The IOPC says the issues are not isolated to the one team and that the Met needs to rebuild public trust and confidence. More than 1 in 10 children are starting school in England without having had their measles, mumps and rubella jab. Take-up of the vaccine is at its lowest rate in a decade. The World Health Organization says 95% of children need to be vaccinated to keep measles at bay, but the current coverage for the 2 doses of the MMR jab is around 85%. Dr. Sarah Kayat says even a small drop in vaccine take-up can cause problems.
We know that even small insults in that level can result in outbreaks on a population level. And I think with COVID restrictions coming down, travel becoming more popular again, we have to remember that there may be travel from more endemic areas where measles is more endemic, and that will mean outbreaks will start happening.
The game Wordle has been sold to the New York Times. The hugely successful online puzzle went for an undisclosed sum in the low 7 figures. Its creator says the word game's popularity became overwhelming to run. The US newspaper has hinted it may not remain free to play in the future. You are up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, the briefing with Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, civil servant Sue Gray found failures of leadership and judgment at Number 10. But the Prime Minister has been rallying the troops and promising change. I'll be asking Conservative MP Brendan Clark-Smith whether he buys what Boris Johnson says. The government's levelling up proposals are out tomorrow. I've been up to Lancashire with Labour's shadow levelling up secretary, Lisa Nandy, asking people there what the North needs. I'll be asking polling guru Professor John Curtis what voters make of the ongoing row over Downing Street parties. Can Boris Johnson win back people's support, or has too much damage been done? And give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Huge day in Westminster yesterday with extraordinary scenes in Parliament. Joining us now from Downing Street is our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, good to see you. What's the mood like today?
Well, in many ways, actually, things seem to have calmed down somewhat since where we were yesterday afternoon in the Prime Minister's statement in the House of Commons. I think the notable moment was probably when he addressed the parliamentary party last night. There was a sense from MPs that he was properly contrite and that he was trying to set out a path that things would change, suggesting to MPs that they could WhatsApp him whenever they wanted, even quoting Othello, I think, at one point. But fundamentally, the problems for the Prime Minister haven't really gone away. There are still lots and lots of questions. There still is anger within the Conservative Party about Sue Gray's report, which was frankly more critical, I think, than many of them had envisaged. And even though the Prime Minister is in Ukraine today, this is essentially a story that is not going to go away. And it's not going to go away, not least of all because the Met, we know, are investigating at least 4 parties where we think the Prime Minister was personally involved. And we also know that Sue Gray is still terribly keen to publish her entire report. So this could drag out for weeks, it could be months, and there could still be further revelations to come as well. So this idea that the Prime Minister somehow has got over the latest hump is true. But this idea that he is somehow out of this altogether, out of the woods, if you like, well, that certainly is not the case. Keir Starmer today suggesting that the Prime Minister is simply prepared to say anything to save his own skin. And we also, of course, heard from Andrew Mitchell yesterday suggesting that he no longer has confidence in the Prime Minister. Again, the sense, and I've got this throughout the entire episode, Gloria, is that many MPs in private are quite critical of Boris Johnson and his leadership. They're quite fearful about just how long this is going to go on for, but they still do not think this is the moment, that the line has been crossed yet, that they're still prepared to wait, initially, of course, for Sue Gray's update yesterday, but now until we get that Met Police report or indeed Sue Gray's publication in public. Though there is a lot of concern about the Prime Minister's slur of Keir Starmer yesterday, referring to Jimmy Savile, and indeed the tone that he struck in the Commons. All in all, though, for the government, and we've heard from ministers again today, they say they're determined to draw a line under this now, that yes, they will wait for the further investigations, but the government at the moment is focusing on getting on, as they would say, with the job. That means the Levelling Up report, flagship policy due to be released tomorrow. It also means focusing on that big geopolitical crisis at the moment of Russia and Ukraine. As I say, the Prime Minister left a little bit earlier here from Downing Street. He's on his way to Kiev to meet with President Zelensky. They're going to have a meeting and then a press conference. Again, Britain pressing that they've got Ukraine's back in all of this as part of that diplomatic effort. But fundamentally, and let's not forget this, as I say, the trouble for Boris Johnson on Partygate is far from over.
As ever, thank you to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. As Darren said, the Prime Minister is off to the Ukraine today, hoping he's done enough to keep Conservative MPs from sending those letters to Sir Graham Brady. He's in listening mode, but will it be enough to save him? I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Conservative MP for Bassett Law, Brendan Clark-Smith. Brendan, welcome back to the show. So 12 parties being looked into by the police. 3 or 4 were attended by the Prime Minister. 1 was in his own flat. 300 pictures handed over. And we've only had the edited version of the Sue Gray report. What's a day in the life of a Conservative MP like today?
Well, I think we're relieved that a report actually came out. We've been waiting a long time for it. I think people are fed up of it dragging on more than anything. And of course, that report has been severely limited because of the police investigation that's going on as well. But the Prime Minister says what is in the report. He's accepting the recommendations there. And he's also going to act on what Sue Gray has said. He's doubled down on the apology for it. He's taken responsibility for it as well. And then, of course, he spoke with the parliamentary party later on. He was very conciliatory, as Darren said. And I think that actually smoothed things over very well. And I think it's kind of that added impetus to get things done.
So we may not have had that full report. Was pretty damning, even in its watered-down form. It was scathing about failures of leadership and judgment in Number 10 and the Cabinet Office. Why are you sticking by him?
Well, I think there's certainly a cultural issue, and I know people have mentioned that this has gone on in Downing Street for many years under previous premierships
Come on,
as well.
Theresa May, can you imagine her getting the booze out?
Yeah, I don't think it's so much the Prime Minister's as the culture of the workplace itself there. And, of course, you are ultimately responsible as the person in charge, as the Prime Minister, and that's why I'm glad he wants to do something about it. Of course, with COVID and the restrictions, there's the added issue there and the moral issue that people are putting across and whether any rules are broken. So I certainly accept what the Prime Minister said on that. I'm pleased he's actually said he's going to do something about it. Of course, until the full report comes out, it's very difficult to do that. But I also welcome the fact that he said when that report does come out, it will be published in full.
Now, the police are looking into various gatherings, including a gathering in the Downing Street flat on the evening of November the 30th, 2020, to mark Dominic Cummings' sacking as the Prime Minister's chief advisor. Questioned in the House of Commons on December the 8th about whether he would confirm that the November the 13th event happened, the Prime Minister said no. But I'm sure that whatever happened, the guidance was followed and the rules were followed at all times. Would he have to step down if he misled Parliament?
Well, I don't think the Prime Minister's misled Parliament. I think what he's done is he's given information to people in good faith in the House based on the information that the Prime Minister actually has. Of course, if he's been given the wrong or incorrect information, then I'm sure he's happy to correct that, and I'm sure he's happy to put that side of the story across. But again, we're not really going to know that, Gloria, until that full report is published.
So the Prime Minister addressed Tory MPs, as Darren referred to, as you referred to last night. He said he was in full listening mode. But what struck me is that on Sunday, Rishi Sunak and the Prime Minister wrote an article saying that they were going to, confirming that they were going to put up taxes in April. Now, I don't reckon most Tory MPs want that to happen. Does that really signal listening mode, that they're full steam ahead with that policy?
It's very difficult because national insurance rise, of course, our manifesto said we weren't going to do that. That was before COVID came along. Something I found very, very difficult to vote for and something I would obviously welcome if we could find a way around it and didn't have to do that. But at the same time, that's there to pay for the NHS backlog and for social care. And if we're going to actually keep that national insurance cut in place, then we're going to have to show where that money actually comes from. And I think it will be a far worse situation going into the next couple of years and people still can't see a doctor. So if there's a solution, then that's great, but the money's got to come from somewhere, unfortunately.
Would you say the Prime Minister was absolutely out of the woods, or are you guys putting him on probation for a little while longer?
Well, I think it's difficult while an investigation's going on. I mean, I certainly have 100% faith in the Prime Minister. I think he's done a very good job, whether it's with the economy, whether it's with vaccines, and, of course, second anniversary of getting Brexit done. And it's something that we're very proud of. I wouldn't want to see us throw the baby out with the bathwater in that sense. The PM's just flown off to Kiev, as we've seen some very important work to be doing. So I think the benefit of the doubt, we've seen the Sue Gray report or the redacted or the at least basic version of it, and I think that gives us something to go on. I think now we can concentrate on other things and we can come back to this when it's actually completed.
You say benefit of the doubt. Do you think the public have given the Prime Minister the benefit of the doubt on these gatherings?
I think the public are very frustrated, and I think if you look over the last few weeks, I think the mood has significantly changed to the point whereas they want to actually move on now. That doesn't mean forgetting if something has gone wrong there, and if something has gone wrong and someone needs to be punished further down the line or action needs to be taken, then I think that's fair enough. But what I found generally on the doorsteps, Gloria, is people want to talk about the cost of living. They want to talk about the energy prices. They want to talk about Russia having 100,000 troops on the border with Ukraine. So whilst I wouldn't say it's completely a Westminster bubble issue, I think certainly what we're talking about this week, it's mainly about MPs and what's going on in the Commons.
So Andrew Mitchell, former Cabinet Minister, said this morning that the Prime Minister's refusal to take responsibility is like battery acid corroding the Conservative Party. You just don't get why anybody would say that.
Well, I respect colleagues' views. I know it's not for everybody, and there's a diversity of views within the party, as we've seen. Many people have changed their views over the last couple of weeks. Even yesterday, we had some fairly prominent people coming out saying that actually they accept what the Prime Minister said and is promised to actually put some changes in there. So, again, whilst I respect what Andrew said, you know, I respectfully disagree with that, and I think we've still got a lot of good things to come from this Prime Minister.
Oh, well, let's look at what the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, said yesterday. What the Gray report does show is that number 10 Downing Street was not observing the regulations they had imposed on the public. So either my right honourable friend had not read the rules or didn't understand what they meant and others around him, or they didn't think the rules applied to number 10. She said, which was it, when she addressed the Prime Minister through the Speaker. Which one do you think it was?
Well, I think the Prime Minister understands the rules, and I think most other people in the country understand the rules as well. You and I, you know, we've abided by them. We've done our best to. And, of course, the Prime Minister has gone to the House and he said that he fully believes that he has complied with those rules. So, again, if people haven't, then there's a case to answer potentially. But I think in the meantime, I think you do have to give people the benefit of the doubt until at least there's evidence there to the contrary.
Would you give him the benefit of the doubt on what he said to Keir Starmer yesterday? Because the former Chief Whip of the Conservative Party, Julian Smith, has said this. The smear made against Keir Starmer relating to Jimmy Savile yesterday is wrong and cannot be defended. It should be withdrawn. Should it?
I mean, for right or wrong reasons, occasionally I'll get that raised on the doorstep. But what I would actually say with that, it is part of the Punch and Judy part of politics. Some people like it, some don't. But I think the wider point here has kind of been missed, really. And that's when you're the head of an organisation, even if you're not directly involved with something yourself, if something happens with your organisation, you take ultimate responsibility for it. That's what the Prime Minister's got at the moment with the Sue Gray inquiry, things that don't necessarily involve the Prime Minister directly, but he's taking responsibility for number 10, for Whitehall, for the Cabinet Office and what is going on there. So through that lens, I understand the point that was being made. I know some people don't think the statement was the place to actually do that, but I can understand where it's coming from.
Brendan Clark-Smith, always willing to take one for the team.
And always a pleasure, Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan Clark-Smith. Next, we're talking levelling up. I went to Lee in Lancashire with Labour's Lisa Nandy to talk to people about what they need and what they make of our current politicians. Don't go away.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Tomorrow, the government will publish its proposals to level up Britain. I went out with Lisa Nandy, the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary, to talk to voters and grasp what they think needs to happen to improve their town. Here we are in Leigh, constituency that has elected Labour MPs for 100 years, until 2019. Now got a Tory. What are you going to do about it?
Well, it broke my heart when Leigh went Tory for the first time. Like you said, after 100 years of Labour, it's the seat right next door to mine, and I know it well. I said at the time that I was going to make it my mission to win back the trust of people that we'd lost. It had been a long time coming, and it arrived in 2019 in many parts of the country. And I think that if we are going to win back people's trust, people in towns like Leigh have got to be heard. And that's why I wanted to come and listen to people with you today.
Let's do some listening. I'm Gloria. How you doing?
Thank you.
Hiya. Hello. This is Lisa. I'm Gloria. Lindsay.
Jason. Kevin. Martin.
All from Leigh.
All from Leigh.
No, I'm from Middlesbrough, actually.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Did you change your vote? How do
No.
you... So you sound like you're always Labour through thick and thin.
I haven't voted a couple of times, but I've generally always voted Labour.
What about you, Lindsay?
No, I didn't vote Labour last time.
Did you vote Conservative for the first time last time?
Yes.
Have you all? Did you vote? Have you?
Oh,
do you always?
always, yeah.
You always vote Labour?
Down in
right?
the wool, cut my arm with thread.
Right.
Not anymore.
Did you vote Labour last time?
No.
What did you do last time?
Voted Conservative. Right. And it was not so much to as a political allegiance, but just to make a point that we've had enough of it. The basic Labour supporter is not represented by this party anymore. The Labour Party is no longer what it was, and they've abandoned the people who they should be supporting.
You're going to the polling station tomorrow. How are you going to vote?
I don't know.
The reason I vote Labour now is just to get these Tories out.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is horrible to poor people. I work in different houses. I run my own business, kitchens, bathrooms. I work in poor houses. I work in rich houses. Yeah. And some of these kids, they're just living in it's poverty. You can see it. They're just living in poverty. It
would have to be for the Conservatives because Labour aren't in a position to be a government.
It's all kicking off around this table.
because what I mean, I don't know what those policies are. Not at all.
That's one of the problems at the moment, I think.
And they've been hiding behind this COVID epidemic at the moment.
I probably wouldn't vote.
Really?
Because I don't feel represented by anybody anymore. It's probably the first time. It's probably the first time in my life I feel completely unrepresented by anybody.
I'm just thinking it's really interesting. We don't know what the Labour policies are on what everyone's going through right now, but I do know that I wouldn't vote for someone who's now giving people £350 a month energy bills. It's not fair. You can't. That's not livable. So I don't know what Labour's policies are. I don't know if I would even vote because there's no one that I can look at and go, do you know what, you're actually trying to help us.
Do you know, it's really interesting to me because a lot of what you've just said is what me and quite a few of the other Labour politicians in the Shadow Cabinet have been talking about for the last few weeks, but nobody's heard it. And I find that really interesting. So we've been talking about energy bills. We've been talking about how people are being hit with like a triple whammy because VAT's high, because people are having sky-high energy bills, because wages are low, and there's about to be a new tax hike on working people that the Tories have brought in. And we've been saying you've got to have a windfall tax on the North Sea because they've made record profits to actually cut people's energy bills because we need to get money back into people's pockets really quickly now.
And then the massive one, of course, is the clean air zones are about to come in, which is another tax on people and businesses, which is going to put people straight out of business.
Imagine in an ideal scenario, there's a general election tomorrow and there's a political party or a politician, you think, absolutely yes, that is what I'm voting for. That person, those people have my interests and Leigh's interests at heart. What would that look like?
I think we need Lee's not had any investment. I mean, I've lived here 20 years now, and our high street needs that, and that will attract people, it will attract more businesses, and it will just be a better, nicer place to live, and it just doesn't seem to be coming.
But that's private investment, isn't it? It's not.
Well, no, because we need some levelling up. They promised us, and that's never that levelling up has never seemed to have arrived.
One of the things that we've been saying is you should tax the big giants like Amazon more, because they don't pay their fair share of tax at the moment. Tax them more and cut business rates for businesses on the high streets. Is that the sort of thing that would...
That's the only way of anything high streets can be saved, because they're just dying.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter, she's 24. I don't think she's ever shopped in Lee since she was about 16.
Really? Just a really strong sense that we're not getting it right at the moment, and I am determined to win you back, including you.
And hadn't been getting it right for a long time.
Well, I think that's right, and actually a lot of what I came into politics to do was about making sure that places like Lee, like Wigan, got a voice in national politics for the first time.
Not everyone goes to university, and surely not with the money these days. I mean, what is it now, 9, 10 grand a year?
Yeah, my daughter's just applying for university. She's going to start in September. I'm like, you are 17 years old and you are going to be £50,000 in debt before you've even started working.
Yeah. Is it putting her off?
Yeah. She's terrified.
Is she the first in her family? Will she be the first in her family to go to university?
Yeah, she is, yeah. You can do it. You can do this great job. But we're going to put you £50,000 in debt to do it.
And if she doesn't go to university, what do you think she would do?
I don't know. I think it would be absolutely devastating, because there's so much talent.
There's no industry, there's no jobs, is there?
What would she do?
What does it do?
Yeah.
What if there was, if we had really good industry here, if we had I was in Grimsby yesterday, and they've got loads of investment in renewables, and they've got people coming into apprenticeships to learn how to be the sort of engineers of the future and to design all the new technology that's going to power the country through the next century. If those sorts of jobs and apprenticeships were available, do you think young people around here would jump at it?
But some do still need to go to university, and that still needs dealing with. My daughter's studying law, so she needs to go to university, but that doesn't mean that she should have to come out with £50,000 worth of debt.
So they need the choices, and they need the chances.
Absolutely, yeah.
And at the moment, both avenues are pretty closed.
Yeah, they are.
Most people in Leeds are still not earning a lot of money, but they've all bought their houses. So they all think they're middle class and everything. Well, we still live in a council house. No, won't have it any other way.
Yeah. Quite happy.
Yeah, I can tell.
We both work.
And you work at the mill?
Yeah,
you both work at the mill.
Yeah. People want to work to make a living, and they're getting nowhere because there's nothing there to help them.
Yeah. So long, people just haven't been listened to.
No, they're not.
And that's why we're here.
Just regular people who are going through all this, who are the ones whoever's put into power, if you like, are the ones who have to deal with it. Yeah. Not them in power, it's the people, like us. It's people who want to shout out and what's going on, but there's no one to listen. Yeah. There's nowhere to go to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's my job. I'm gonna do that for you, and thank you so much.
Gary, so out of everybody here, you seem the most... I mean, you still vote, and you have a Labour identity, and it seems quite clear that you're...
My father's always told me vote Labour. And people who have respect, who have known in past, have all said, you always go Labour. Because we're a working town, aren't we?
Something happened at the last election.
So you said not enough people voted. People got fed up with stuff not changing, was there? Nothing was changing. Like I said, Leah's gone to the dogs. Awful up Lee now.
If there was one thing that you could say to any politician, say, listen, if you do nothing else, do this to my town, what is it?
I'd set police more than anything.
Yeah, more police.
Yeah,
police.
Probably police.
When was the last time you voted Labour?
About 15 years ago. Because, as you said, for Labour we're in for 100 years, and we changed last time to Conservatives. So I think in that time, Labour was still in the last 7-8 years of that 100, and I think we've got to give the guy a chance now.
People have been saying for a long time that things aren't working in lots of parts of the country, and it's about time that we stood up and did something about it.
It does tend to be the small industrial towns, I think, that are sort of like falling by the wayside now because they've lost all their industry and what have you. There's not as much happening.
I am going to make it my mission to win you back and to deliver for this town and for towns like this around the country.
So we've done some listening. What you learned?
I think it's pretty clear that there's no huge enthusiasm for any political party, really. People aren't looking at the Tories and thinking, yeah, these people have got my back, they're definitely going to deliver. But we've got work to do to earn back people's trust in Labour. Those votes will not just come back to us. We're going to have to go out and convince people that we've got a plan. And most of all, what I heard was what I hear back home in Wigan a lot, that people are proud of their areas, they're proud of their communities, but for too long they've been watching a political conversation that has nothing to do with it. And they want to be back at the centre of our thinking. If we can show that we care about putting money back into people's pockets, that we care about thriving high streets and town centres, that we care that town centres in many parts of the country have become no-go areas because of crime and antisocial behaviour and drugs. If we can show that we care about that and we've got a plan for these places that is ambitious for them as the people in them, I think that's what it will take, and that's what I'm determined to do.
Thank you for spending the day with me. Thanks, Lisa and Andy. After the break, we'll be speaking to polling guru Sir John Curtis to find out what voters make of the party row. And Conservative MP Tom Hunt will talk about the mood in the Tory party, and we'll look ahead to the levelling up proposals and what it means for education. First, it's the news with Rosie.
Thanks, Gloria. It's 12:32. Good afternoon. I'm Rosie Wright to keep you up to date here on GB News. The Prime Minister is on his way now to Ukraine to try to de-escalate tensions with Russia. Boris Johnson will speak to President Volodymyr Zelensky about trying to find a diplomatic solution. A call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, which was due to be held yesterday, has been rescheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Meanwhile, there have been renewed calls for Boris Johnson's resignation, despite his pledge to overhaul how he runs government. He apologised after the Sue Gray report into alleged Downing Street parties found failures of leadership and judgment. The Prime Minister says an updated version of the inquiry will be published after the police investigation is complete. National Highways will not face corporate manslaughter charges over 2 fatal crashes on a smart motorway. Police have announced they won't be taking action after investigating the deaths of 3 people on the M1 last year. It's after a coroner concluded there was an ongoing risk of future deaths on motorways without a clear hard shoulder. Around 1,600 Tesco staff are facing redundancy. The supermarket chain is going to stop replenishing stock overnight at dozens of stores, and some of its petrol stations will no longer be staffed out of hours. Tesco's also closing its Jack's discount shop, saying it wants to focus on its core business. More than 1 in 10 children are starting school in England without having had their measles, mumps and rubella jab. Take-up of the vaccine is at its lowest rate in a decade. The World Health Organization says 95% of children need to be vaccinated to keep measles at bay. But the current coverage for the 2 doses of the MMR jab is around 85%. You are now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. A short break now, and then we'll be back with The Briefing and Gloria.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Now, back to that long-awaited Sue Gray report into Downing Street parties, or at least what was published of the investigation yesterday. There have been so many parties and so many twists that it's hard to keep track. Here is our Home Affairs and Security editor, Mark White, explaining just where we're at.
It is an image that drew widespread condemnation well before the publication of Sue Gray's report. Anger at the sight of the Prime Minister alongside his wife and other Number 10 staff enjoying cheese and wine in the Downing Street garden while the rest of the nation endured COVID lockdown. This gathering and more than a dozen others in possible breach of COVID laws have plunged Boris Johnson's government into weeks of crisis. The official Cabinet Office report into the culture that allowed these events is damning. With the Scotland Yard investigation underway, Sue Gray could only deliver partial conclusions, but they still make deeply uncomfortable reading for the Prime Minister and his team. She found at least some of the gatherings in question represent a serious failure to observe not just the high standards expected of those working at the heart of government, but also of the standards expected of the entire British population at the time. There were, she said, failures of leadership and judgment by different parts of Number 10 and the Cabinet Office at different times. In the Commons, the Prime Minister was contrite.
I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. And it's no use saying that this or that was within the rules, and it's no use saying that people were working hard. This pandemic was hard for everyone.
The senior civil servant took particular aim at the lack of leadership throughout Downing Street that allowed for clearly inappropriate behaviour, even in the midst of a global pandemic. Sue Gray's report said at times it seems there was too little thought given to what was happening across the country in considering the appropriateness of some of these gatherings, the risks they presented to public health, and how they might appear to the public.
Prime Minister, the British public aren't fools. They never believed a word of it. They think the Prime Minister should do the decent thing and resign.
There is considerable anger within political circles that this report has been severely restricted in its initial scope because of the official police investigation into a number of the Downing Street parties and a request from Scotland Yard not to prejudice their ongoing investigation.
So we've just received that, and my officers are prioritising this week to consider what's been provided in that bundle of material, what further investigations that they need to do, and of course who they're going to be contacted. But at the moment, no, I do not know exactly who will be contacted.
The Prime Minister's critics say they fear he's been able to kick the Partygate fallout into the long grass, with so far no commitment to publish the second part of Sue Gray's report in full. In truth, though, this only prolongs his protracted discomfort as political opponents and the media refuse to move on from a row that continues to seriously damage his premiership. Mark White, GB News.
Well, some Conservative MPs were gloomy yesterday in the Commons, but many were reassured after Boris Johnson met with them. But what do the public make of it all? The polls can give us an idea, and there's no one better to tell us than polling guru Sir John Curtis. I'm delighted he joins me now. Good to see you, John. There have been some instant polls, haven't they? What do they show?
The instant polls show that the public's view as to whether or not Boris Johnson should resign is exactly the same as it was 24 hours ago, before Sue Gray's report was published and before the Prime Minister appeared before the House of Commons. So all three of the companies have figures of between 62 and 69% saying that the Prime Minister should resign, including amongst that number around 2/5 of those who voted Conservative in 2019. But in truth, in all three cases, the number they have got in terms of proportion who will think that the Prime Minister should resign is almost exactly the same as they were getting the last time they polled on this subject, which I think is just further confirmation that, in a sense, people have already pretty much made up their minds on this subject on both sides of the fence. Clearly, a majority of the public think that the Prime Minister should go. Some, of course, would have thought the Prime Minister should go months ago because they're opposition voters. But equally, however, it's also clear that the division amongst Conservative voters is still there, and that yesterday's revelations neither persuaded more people that perhaps he should resign, but equally the Prime Minister's efforts yesterday, whatever success he had amongst Tory MPs, did not succeed in persuading any voters that he should remain in office.
Can the Prime Minister recover voters' trust and support?
That, in a sense, is the $64,000 question. If I were wanting to paint an optimistic picture for the Prime Minister and for the Conservatives, I think I would say, first of all, it does look as though, so far at least, there is a clear flaw to the black hole into which the Conservatives have fallen. That is, that the polls have not at any stage in the last 8 weeks have suggested that support for the Conservatives has fallen below 30% on average. And that does therefore mean that the position of the party faces at the moment is not as serious as the one that faced John Major in the wake of Black Wednesday and the allegations about sleaze, etc., when the government for a long period of time was below 30%. Secondly, you can also see, however, the immediate reaction to some of these revelations doesn't, in terms of depressing the Conservatives' vote share, doesn't always carry through. So we've had a couple of occasions now, including the polls over the last week or so, in which support for the Conservatives, having fallen, begins to go back up again by a couple of points or so. And that's also true of people's evaluations of the Prime Minister's role in office. That said, of course, the very particular nature of the difficulty that's facing the government is that, this is not a debate about policy, as bedeviled John Major or indeed Gordon Brown. It's not even an argument about sleaze in the government in general, as again bedeviled John Major. This is very much a debate about A, the honesty, and B, the ethics of the Prime Minister. It's one where, so far at least, public opinion, including many Conservative voters, are not willing to feel that the Prime Minister has been telling the truth. Polls have got up to 80% of people saying the Prime Minister isn't telling the truth, including around half of Conservative voters. So the real question is, having come to the conclusion for the time being at least, that they don't necessarily believe what the Prime Minister says, is will they be continuing to believe his claims about levelling up, dealing with the cost of living crisis, etc., because having come to doubt him once over one subject, do they continue to doubt him across the piece? And therefore it does become difficult for both him and the Conservatives to recover.
Let's just talk about the Labour Party for a second. I was a Labour MP under Ed Miliband's leadership. Labour had quite a long time ahead in the polls, actually. And then come the general election, David Cameron wins the first majority in 2015 since 1992. It can slip back just as easily as some say.
It can, and I think one has to say, although for a while the Labour Party was running at 41% in the polls, and that's the first time it's running above 40 since the 2019 general election. It's already slipped back to 40 or so, which is no more than was the case 12 months ago. I mean, this is still very, very much a story of the Conservatives suffering from a self-inflicted wound that has damaged the Prime Minister's reputation, reduced Conservative support in the polls. It's not necessarily translating into enthusiasm for Labour. Now, that said, some signs that satisfaction with Sir Keir Starmer has improved a bit, and he can certainly now outpoll the Prime Minister as the best Prime Minister, but again, that's a commentary on the Prime Minister. And I think some people would say that perhaps yesterday in the House of Commons, he began to demonstrate an ability to emote and not just simply to analyse. But there is no doubt that, persuading the public that it's either that Sir Keir in particular or the Labour Party in general are ready for government is still very much a work in progress. The polls confirm that. The focus groups also demonstrate that. So the challenge facing the Labour Party is, as it were, having been presented with a government that the public for the time being no longer trust, can they now themselves gain the trust of the public, gain the enthusiasm of the public for an alternative Labour government? And that, for my money at least, means the Labour Party needs now to be much more willing to tell us what it would do if it were in government. We've had hints of that on occasion, but we still get an awful lot of Labour spokesmen coming on, often very articulately unpicking the government's case, but somehow being much more silent when being asked about what Labour themselves would do as an alternative.
And just finally, local elections are happening in some parts of the country in May. Yeah. If you were to give us a few examples where we should really be focusing as a measure of how each party is doing, where would you point us to?
Well, that's going to be quite difficult. I mean, London is going to be the place that shows the clearest story because that's where all the council seats are up for grabs. But of course, London has already become pretty much a one-party state. It's now dominated by Labour. So, there will be a few councils like Wandsworth, like Barnet, where people will be looking and where Labour didn't make some of the kind of progress they should have made when these seats were last contested 4 years ago. But the truth is, Labour, the Conservatives, are not defending that much. Outside of London, the difference is that for the most part, it's only 1/3 of the seats up for grabs. Conservative and Labour roughly neck and neck, so certainly there will be Conservative losses. But again, a lot of these places, very urban, already still pretty much Labour. Scotland could be difficult for the Conservatives, however. When the seats were last fought there, the Conservatives did very well by their recent standards. They were already on a hiding to nothing. Recent polls have been particularly disappointing north of the border. And of course, in Scotland, the Conservatives don't really want to do badly because perhaps in the not too distant future, we're going to be having a debate north of the border about Scotland's constitutional future.
John Curtis, polling guru, as ever. We're very grateful for you explaining all of that so clearly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, we've been hearing about levelling up for ages, and tomorrow we'll finally find out what the government has got planned because its white paper, its proposals will be published. Today, the focus is on education. The government plans to target 55 cold spots of the country where school outcomes are the weakest. Joining me now is the Conservative MP for Ipswich, Tom Hunt. Tom, it's good to see you back on the show. Tom, the big education announcement today. Labour's Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says the government are just recycling a 2017 opportunity areas policy. She says the government's just trying to distract from the utter chaos at the heart of Downing Street by recycling old announcements. Tell us why you think she's wrong.
Well, I mean, I think only a few months ago I had Will Quince, who's one of the education ministers, came to Ipswich to see the great work that the opportunity area funding has done in Ipswich, and it's been a huge boost to our town, being one of the 12 opportunity areas. So this being one of these 55 new areas, I think is of further benefit to Ipswich as a town and all the deprived areas within it. Of course, Labour are going to say it's bad. They're always going to say everything's bad, nothing goes far enough, because that is position, and that is what they do. So it's not surprising that the Labour Party have said what they've said about it. But I know the difference that this money is making on the ground, and has already made in Ipswich, and will continue to make.
Tom, speaking more generally, your party, your Prime Minister, has clearly had a difficult time in recent weeks, arguably months. Would you say that he's out of the woods and that Tory MPs are just ready to move on and they want him to lead you into the next election, or is he on probation?
I wouldn't use terms as strong as that. I think that he... clearly the last few months have been very regrettable. Clearly there has been a degree of cut-through with the public, understandably. There's been cut-through with me. As a citizen of this country, as well as a member of Parliament, I've been very cross about many of the revelations and what I've heard in the report yesterday. But the question is, what is the proportionate step to take? And my sense at the moment is that it would be disproportionate to seriously look to topple the Prime Minister for what's happened. Ultimately, yes, the developments of the past few months have been regrettable, but I think if we look at things like Brexit, COVID, I think there's a lot of things the Prime Minister has got right. And I think, only just over 2 years ago, he got a whomping great democratic mandate to govern this country. So I think that, yes, of course, I think it is right and it is legitimate to say that he needs some space and needs an opportunity to reset some aspects of government and to focus on the country's priorities.
And he met with Conservative MPs last night. I don't know if you were there or not at that meeting, but how would you describe the mood? What did he say to you? Did you go away with your spring in your step? How would you describe it?
Well, I was there early, so I had a nice seat. I had a good vantage point, and it went on for about an hour. And I think the Prime Minister, I think, performed well last night with colleagues. And I actually asked a question about illegal immigration and the steps I believe the Prime Minister needs to take to address that issue. But other colleagues raised all manner of other issues. So obviously, clearly, some of the colleagues in question were disappointed and angry. Many others are very supportive. But no, I think it was a good meeting, and I think that as it stands, barring any further significant major developments, I would be surprised if there's anything like a confidence vote anytime soon. I think that the majority of Conservative members of Parliament think, though annoyed about what's happened and sympathetic to the concerns their constituents have raised, think that ultimately, when we're looking at what's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now, and we're looking at what's happening with the cost of living challenges, ultimately we need a government that is dedicated to tackling those challenges, not 2 or 3 months of infighting in a leadership election. That is right now not what I think we need.
And finally, just your reaction to some of your colleagues, Theresa May, the former Prime Minister, Aaron Bell, who spoke up yesterday, Andrew Mitchell, Angela Richardson, who resigned as an aide to the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove. There's clearly some very angry and upset colleagues. Your message to them?
Well, I was sat next to Aaron when he made his comment. I've known Aaron Bell since 2017. I've known him for over 4 years, and he's a colleague of mine who I think possesses a lot of integrity and has good values. We're both disappointed by the developments of the revelations, developments of the last few months. But I respect Aaron's position, and I respect his opinion, but I don't quite agree with him in terms of what we do next. Aaron has one view, I have another view. That happens in politics, but I do have a significant amount of respect for Aaron as a colleague and as a friend. And obviously he had the particular experience that he had throughout the pandemic, which must have been hurtful and probably added to his anger and hurt at developments of the last 2 or 3 months. So I respect his opinion, but clearly we don't quite agree on how to go forward in the short to medium term.
Conservative MP for Ipswich, Tom Hunt, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, no problem.
You have been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. We will be back tomorrow at 10 to 12. We come back slightly earlier on Wednesday because of Prime Minister's Question Time. I'm sure it'll be a blockbuster. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan live from Macclesfield. But for now, it's your weather.
Hi there. A bright but windy day in the far north with showers for northern Scotland. Cloudier further south with some outbreaks of generally light rain and drizzle associated with this cold front as it clears south. And it's in between this cold front and the warm front there across southern parts of the UK where we've got a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. But to the north, brighter skies, tight isobars there across the far north of Scotland. So for the likes of Caithness, Sutherland, Orkney, 55 to 65 mile/hour wind gusts. So wind warning in force because of weakened structures. Could be some further impacts following the storms at the weekend. Otherwise, a breezy day to come for northern parts of the UK. Some sunny spells, a few showers in the far north of Scotland. Much cloudier further south, where it will be mild at 11 or 12 Celsius. We keep the cloud across southern areas overnight. In fact, there'll be thicker cloud pushing in from the west as the night goes on. Some more persistent rain into Northern Ireland for a time, western parts of northern England, as well as western and southern Scotland. Showers continue across the Northern Isles, and for Shetland, they'll be falling as sleet and snow overnight. But further south, drier with some breaks in the cloud. However, for the vast majority, it is a mild night. That is away from Shetland, where it will be cold. Cold air continues there for Shetland as we start off tomorrow, but otherwise a lot of the cloud across the UK remains. Further outbreaks of light rain and drizzle for Northern Ireland, western Scotland, as well as parts